My name is Lise Motherwell, and I am the daughter of Robert Motherwell. This is a picture of him smoking a cigarette in his Provincetown studio. My father was somebody who really appreciated creativity and freedom in many different aspects, freedom of thought, freedom of and the way that manifested itself was that he gave us many freedoms. And one thing about him that many people don't know is that he grew up in California, so he was very much a Californian in terms of his attitude towards cars and the sun. He absolutely loved cars. He always had a convertible, which he would drive around Provincetown all summer long. And when I turned 16 and got my driver's license, the first thing he did was give me a car. And what he said was it really represented freedom, and that for me was really true. It became my favorite toy and allowed me to explore many parts of the country. When he bought a car, he would occasionally say, "I don't really like this," and give it to me. So there were years that I had 2 or 3 new cars in a year, which was quite a privilege. And I remember one summer he bought himself a Bugatti. Wish he had given me that one, but it was gorgeous. It was an old sports car and had a very long wheelbase. And I remember it was also a convertible. And I remember the day he let me drive it downtown in Provincetown, which was such a kick.
How old were you when he was married to Helen Frankenthaler, right? And how old were you when that happened?
I was 4 when he married Helen Frankenthaler.
You're really young. And did you? And how long were they married?
About 10 years.
So it's
10, 11, 12 years.
It's so rare for two talented people that are kind of on equal footing to be in the same house and have the equal stature within their field. Were there lessons that you learned from that? Was there something that that you could draw on as you got older?
Well, I think for me, there were 2 things. One was that the idea that one could be a woman and professional, not have children, decide to spend one's professional life working, and to be able to share that experience with a husband who could appreciate that rather than feel threatened by it was quite a lesson for me. I think that while they worked separately in their studios, there was quite a collaboration in terms of their looking at each other's work and critiquing each other's work and influencing each other's work in different ways. Helen tended to paint with a lot more color, my dad more in black and white, but he also used some color. And you can certainly see the influence of their work in each other's work over time. However, I think they also had very different styles and were able to develop that. And their ability to support each other in that, I think, was really quite extraordinary. I also think that they had very different personalities. Helen was very outgoing, social. She loved to go to parties. My dad was shyer, more quiet. And so they had a kind of symbiotic relationship in the sense that Helen would get my father out, and my father would, be the reader and stay at home and talk to her about what he was reading. And I'm sure that those 2 activities, or those 2 different styles of being, were a great influence on their work. As I look across the room and I see the photograph of my dad playing poker, one thing about my father that was very special was he really had interests in many different fields. When I think about the poker game, I remember when we were kids, very little, I was probably 6 and Jeannie was probably 8, he taught us to play poker, and he gave us this game called Pokino, which was a children's version of poker. But he always talked about the psychological aspects of the game, and reading people, and reading people's gestures, and reading people's expressions, and so that it wasn't just playing poker, it was really very much about being with people and understanding people, and that spilled over into his absolutely loving to go to street-side cafes and watch people. He was he really loved to study people. And for somebody who spent so much time in his studio alone, it was really interesting that he had that kind of interest in people and loved quirky people. He loved the differences that people had, and that somehow had to have influenced the way he worked. I give him a lot of credit for being so both accepting and interested in how different people were, and it could be the quirkiest thing in the world, and he never was judgmental about it, which was really a wonderful quality, and probably in part what influenced me to become a psychologist.
I also remember your father talking about how much more relaxed he was here, and the feeling of camaraderie and community as opposed to being hit on all the time, like what would happen closer to New York.
Well, I think he really appreciated that this was a place where he could work and play without that intense competition of the New York City art world. And he really didn't like that. I mean, he was part of it, but he didn't really like that aspect of it. He really mostly just wanted to paint. And Provincetown gave him that place. And I think that for both Jeannie and me, we much prefer a place like Provincetown that's quieter and calmer and allows us to do whatever work we're doing without all the constant interruption of either somebody knocking on your door or somebody wanting you to do one more thing that puts you back in a competitive world. And that having that space to just think and be and create is priceless.